Want to thank you for joining us for today's webinar. And as you get settled, a few reminders. Please use the Q&A function for any questions today, and remember to be constructive in any of those questions or comments to the presenter and to one another to ensure that we have a session that is productive. AIA California will submit one AIA HSW learning unit for those who have completed this session live and in full. And as always, the webinar content and additional resources will be available online shortly after the session. Today's webinar, which will focus on the importance of good acoustical design, the benefits of natural daylighting, and how acoustical metal deck ceiling systems can contribute, and the sustainability factors in acoustical metal deck ceiling systems, is brought to you by Epic Metals. Now to quickly introduce our presenter. John Heinley, AIA, has been the Western Regional Manager at Epic Metals for 20 years. He calls on architects and engineers in Nevada and California and Texas, assisting them in designing their projects with Epic Metals products. John has been a licensed architect in the state of Colorado since 1994. He received his 5-year Bachelor of Architecture degree from Cal Poly Pomona and his AA in Architecture from Santa Ana College. John, thank you for being here. It's always wonderful to see you. Please take it away.
Thank you very much. I appreciate everyone attending today. As she said, I am the Western Regional Manager for Epic Metals. I cover actually California and Nevada, and those of you from Texas probably know my counterpart, Brian Yanch and Louis Roman. So just a little bit about that. As she said, I have been with Epic Metals for over 20 years now. I've met a lot of fine individuals, and I've actually done a lot of work with Epic, and there are so many different applications that make working for the company an exciting thing to be involved in. So with that, I'll start the presentation. Epic Metals is an architectural metal deck manufacturer. We are not in the business in competing with commodity type decks that have no acoustical properties. Our products are not only the structural deck, they have long spanning capabilities, they have high levels of acoustical properties, and we use recycled content in all of our steel. With that being said, we've been in business for over 57 years. We're based in the Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania area. We have 2 plants there, and then we have a 3rd plant in Florida. What if I could totally change the way you think about steel roof and composite floor decking? Look at all those screw shanks that stick through the metal deck. You will never see that with any of our deck products because all of the screw shanks are hidden within the components of the deck. And that's very important to know and understand because seeing screw shanks in a building just is not a good look. We have been very committed to sustainability as a company. I could actually give an hour-long presentation on just sustainability of our products because our president and owner of the company, he's over the top committed. We've done 388 LEED certified projects in 42 states. Little bit of humor here. This building on the left side is a wonderful piece of architecture. I'm just kidding. That's our plant in Bartow, Florida, where we make our product that's used in multi-story residential. To the right, you'll see solar panels. Those solar panels are used to create all the electricity that the manufacturing of those products is taken from. So that means the products made in Florida are all made from the sun for all intents and purposes. And in our Pittsburgh plant, which is in Rankin, Pennsylvania, all of our products come from the electricity generated by wind turbines. So we are the only deck manufacturer in the country that can show this slide. As you know, when you get on a plane, for example, Southwest, they always say when you land, we know you have many choices when it comes to airlines. We know you all have many choices when it comes to picking a structural deck or an acoustical metal deck system. But keep in the back of your head that we're the only deck manufacturer that can make this claim. We've been a member of the U.S. Green Building Council since 2004. Um, this is a list of all the different projects we've done that have been LEED certified. I'm not going to show you every one of these in the slides that you see today, but you're going to see a good majority of these products. How do we assist in the LEED certification and the credits? Currently, we can give a design team an environmental product declaration. But just be aware that EPD basically says that the metal deck is 100% recyclable at an end of a building's life. That doesn't mean the material comes from 100% recycled steel, but steel is recyclable. We can do very high levels of recycled content in steel. And to be honest, it adds no cost to the cost of the material. But an EPD is not product specific, but it's metal deck specific. We are not owned by a steel mill, so hypothetically, if you're working on a project where we need to do what's called a material certification, we can actually find out exactly where the raw materials came from that made the coil that we used on your project. We also meet the Living Building Challenge Red List free option, which means all of the components, I'm going to hold up a sample here, all of the components of this metal deck are 100% free of being bad for the occupants of the building. Here's what a declare label looks like. So one of the reasons we get involved on jobs is because our deck can span farther than most other companies. And as I said, we have high levels of acoustical properties, recycled steel, and high levels of acoustical properties, like I said. But this slide is showing you what end deck looks like. Very cluttered look. Look at all the bar joists, look at all the steel, look at all the columns. Let's say this is a cafeteria at a community college. Well, look what would happen if you used a different profile that we make that can span 24 feet or a product that'll span 58 feet. I will guarantee you with this example, the deck that I showed you originally, that's only 1.5 inches deep, whereas this product is 2.5 inches deeper, or it's 4 inches deep. That being said, even though you're adding 2.5 inches of thickness to the roof, you would be saving in eliminating steel in comparison to this example. Now, a contractor will try and say, well, wow, this other deck is way more expensive. Well, you have to compare how much steel you got rid of. And also, I'll share with you that we're not only the structural deck, but we're the finished ceiling. So the battle we have to fight all the time is when a contractor says, let's compare pricing, you have to get them to put a hung ceiling down below this, because all that is an exposed metal deck. It's not a ceiling system, where this is the structural deck and a finished ceiling system. We also have the ability, as I said in the beginning, all the fasteners used to attach the rigid insulation. All those screws get put down through the dovetail slot of our deck. So this dovetail deck is very linear looking. We have other products that look more like a plated ceiling. We have a hanging system that's also very important about our system. So now you have a structural deck that has an evaluation report. It can be used as the finished ceiling as well. It's exposed, and we can hang things from it without having to do all these other ancillary supports. Now, in a roof deck application, this product will support anywhere between 60 and 110 pounds. It depends on the gauge of the deck as to how much that hanger will support. Now, one of the companies I used to work for many years ago was Unistrut Construction. You guys have all probably heard of Unistrut. I have all their part numbers stuck in my head. I don't know why. It's probably because I remember all their systems. When I used to work for Unistrut, the rule of thumb was for every Hilti anchor that went into a building, 20 to 30 minutes. Well, here in California, union carpenter rates are over $100 an hour. And so putting in one bolt that is going to take them 20 to 30 minutes, that's $50 a bolt. Let's say you were doing a big hospital or a big data center job. That is going to have, I don't know, 15,000 anchors, 15,000 times 50, $750,000 in doing an anchoring system in composite floor deck, whereas ours go up in 2 to 3 minutes. So a huge labor savings in using our hangers. This is what the hanging system looks like. It comes with a wedge bolt and then a nut and a coupling nut that's used below. Now, one of the important parts of our deck is the acoustical component of our systems. And this building that's in Milwaukee is where the Milwaukee Brewers play. And the important part of this slide is basically this next one here. If you can see my sample I'm holding up, what you're looking at is you're looking up through all of those perforations that I'm showing you. And you can see how much blue sky you can see. There's something in the acoustical world called the transparency index. Transparent means if you can see through something, the sound will be absorbed by it. These products have a very high level of acoustical properties, and that's why you can see blue sky when they took this picture during construction. Picture was taken before our mesh spacer and our acoustical insulation was installed. Now, I get asked all the time, how do we compare in price? Well, I'm going to show you with this slide. Look at the reflected sound. NA deck has an NRC of 0.35, noise reduction coefficient. Our product has a noise reduction coefficient of 0.95. So there's almost 2.5 times the amount of perforations in our deck than in a deck, and almost 2.5 times the amount of perforations, amount of insulation in our deck as well. So that's why I can't compare in price. But again, if you hang a ceiling below this NA deck, that assembly is now more expensive than our dovetail deck system. We also have the ability to hide utilities. So either sprinkler lines, power, data, etc. They can all be done with the use of access panels, cover plates, etc. We also have to consider what happens when when the deck goes from inside to outside, or when the deck goes over a wall below. We have to use what are called air dams, which keep those elements from going from one side to the other. We've been involved in a lot of projects that have won awards through the AI Committee on the Environment. We're quite proud of that. This is a job that we did in Atlanta, Georgia, with our profile. Here's an example of a building in downtown San Francisco that won the American Institute Steel Construction Award, 181 Fremont. One of the reasons we got this job, I think our deck was used in 14 or 17 floors of this building, was because of the information I just shared with you about our hanging system. The speed at which the subs could hang to our deck made a huge difference on the cost of the job. It was on the cover of Modern Steel Construction magazine. Here's a during construction shot. So the types of buildings we do are quite varied. It's everything from schools, churches, airports, corporate office buildings, stadiums, arenas, multi-story residential, albeit that's not a big niche, but I could open up a building code and say, yeah, we've done all of those building types. We don't do a lot of strip commercial. We don't do a lot of hospitals, with the exception of we've done a ton of canopies out in front of ER departments and things like that. Baseball stadium, or sorry, football stadium we did in Waco for the Baylor Bears. This was a genius design, and the genius part of it was done by the structural engineer. The structural engineer used one of our products, like what I'm holding up, but it had no perforations in it. So what they did is they sloped our deck from inner ring to outer ring just enough to allow for the rain and hail of Waco to hit our deck. And our deck now became the gutter system for all the entire roof. They put nothing on top of this deck, so it was all left exposed. And here's where you can see the slope. And the other thing is there were internal gutters and downspouts all throughout the building. So it was a genius application. Excuse me, this is another stadium we did in Louisville, Kentucky. This next slide here has sound, but for some reason it's not working. I can hear it, but for some reason you guys can't hear it. Basically, we worked on the NVIDIA job in Santa Clara. And the interesting part about this job was the fact that um, the building was designed around structural supports that were all equilateral triangles. Um, and you can see the triangles here. They were 72 uh, by 72. And each triangle was made up of, I think, 18-foot triangles that were made into one large one. And the interesting part about it is the whole company, their products, if you know anything about them, they make media cards that are used in the 3D and modeling and gaming industry. And their media cards are based on the equilateral triangle. So the fact that they took that and made it as part of the design, as an architect, that's just fantastic to me. You'll also notice all the bundles of steel up on the deck or up on the roof. And what we did to help save money was we bundled all the different lengths in one bundle of steel instead of shipping all the same sheet lengths together and letting the installer figure it out. We did it on our own to help save money. So here's the inside of the space. We did 2 buildings for them, and I believe there's going to be a third coming up, a third phase. Again, talking about daylighting credits. If you're trying to get extra daylighting credits in a building by using like a solitube type system, we can do cutouts in the deck so those holes are already done when our deck ships. Here's a project we did in up near Napa at American Canyon High School. Those were all 14-inch solitubes. Up in the Bay Area, I think the state USGBC just had their meeting up in this building. All of our deck was inside this building, and it won an AI Education Facility Award. That's our composite acoustical floor deck. We've done a lot of natatoriums across the country, and this is at San Francisco State. And in those spaces, there's a lot of corrosive chemicals. Air changes need to be set so that there's enough airflow in the space. But you also have to resist all those chemicals with a paint system. So we use what we trademark and call it a Natacoat system, but in all intents and purposes, it's a tennemic paint. And the tennemic paint is applied at the factory, and then a field coat is required after the deck is installed. And all the insulation is encapsulated so it is protected in the wet environment. This was the 2018 Committee on the Environment Project Award in Sonoma Academy. I bet we all wish we would have learned in a high school environment like this. It's pretty amazing, this class that's in this space. That's all of our deck. Here's a project we did out here in Southern California where I live. I'm in Orange County. This job was in San Diego County. It was a library, and it was supposed to represent the waves of San Diego. That's why the deck was curved. Our deck can be curved in the soft direction very easily, and that's what was done in this application. We have a product that are called Taurus. They're all half an inch deeper than our standard deck profiles, which you guys may or may not have heard of already. ER2RA, ER3.5. What we did is we wanted to value engineer our own deck systems by increasing the deck depth by half an inch. In doing so, that means I can use a lighter gauge and meet the same spans and carry the same loads and have it be less expensive. That could be told on any of these Taurus profiles. We also can hide the utilities in composite deck applications. And here's how to do it correctly. So we can do removable access panels wherever the utilities are going to be hidden. Now, in a 4-inch deep profile, it's much easier to do that, but we put a piece of unistrut up inside the hat channel of the deck. We also have a wind guard system in our cellular profile, which means this insulation is installed in place and it's actually tack welded on the inside at the ends so that it doesn't fall out during transportation. Project we did in up near kind of Fresno, Bakersfield area, Stockton, Terabella. Recreation center we did in Utah. Now we have different ways to do paint systems. The cheapest thing to do, most people think, which is not the case, is to have us just ship bare galvanized deck. The second choice is to have us provide a 2-coat epoxy polyester primer on both sides of the sheet. We do that for about anywhere around, depending on the deck profile, about $1.50 a square foot. I will bet all of you that you can't provide a painting contractor that's going to get up and chemically clean the steel and paint it for less than what we do it for. Subcontractors think they want to save as much money as they can, and so they give us orders for bare galvanized, but that ends up adding money to the job because the painting contractor now has to clean everything. This is a recreation and aquatic center up in San Bruno. I actually just got these photos of this job about a month ago. So you can also see how our hanging system was used a lot. Here's Temecula Valley High School out in Winchester, California. Northwestern's Ryan Fieldhouse, where our products were used. This is where all the athletic teams, most of them, lacrosse, football, soccer, all practice. Library we did at Central Arizona College. And again, what you're seeing is all of our deck being exposed. The transition from inside to outside is also very important. And that's why I want to show you this slide. So it makes it easy to transition to a non-acoustical deck on the outside, and where it goes in at the inside, we just transition from one sheet to the next. It's very easy to do. It's a library we did in Texas. Here's a golf course that we did in Hawaii. And this job was actually prime painted by us and then painted in the field after the deck was installed. A lot of times we get questions about painting it in the field. It's not a big deal as long as the painting contractor is using a spray application and not getting up there with a roller. It's very easy to do. Here's an example of a building in Colorado. So our deck was married with glulam beams. Convention center we did out near Denver International Airport. Nike World Headquarters in Beaverton, Oregon, our deck was used as wall panels. We've actually done some jobs for Apple out in the Reno area, east of Reno, where our deck was used as a sunscreen, but with no perforations. We've done a lot of Mercedes-Benz dealerships all across the country. Excuse me. Here's an office building that we did in Eastern Washington. It's actually the location my grandfather lived till the ripe old age of 99. You can see our deck is used not only as canopies and overhangs and shade structures, but also on the inside all throughout the space. High school in New Mexico. I try really hard not to look at spaces where the utilities don't run inside our deck when they're going parallel to our deck. It's one of my hot buttons. It just bugs the heck out of me. Could be why I have so much gray hair. I'm not sure, but it's a forgotten utilization of our materials, and oftentimes it just gets forgotten about. But the more you think about it, the more these utilities can be hidden. Here's a baseball stadium we did in Cheyenne, Wyoming, where even the utilities were installed on the underside of the deck. If I zoom in here, you can see they did it right parallel to the dovetail, not here, but it makes it a little bit more difficult to see. Community center we did in Tacoma, Washington. A bus maintenance facility we did in Jackson Hole, Wyoming. This had very heavy snow loads on top of this building. So we've started doing, well, not started, but about 7 or 8 years ago, maybe even 9, we started making sunscreens. Those sunscreens are non-structural. They're not going to carry any loads other than the load of how much they weigh themselves. But what we did is we started making our own products based off of products we already made. Make sure you look at what the hot air balloon says. AI, California, and Texas rocks. I did a presentation one time where I normally have the firm name that I'm presenting to, and I accidentally didn't change it. So when I presented to the firm the next day, who was the competitor of the firm the day before, I got a lot of boos from about 35 people. But our deck can be used in a sunscreen application, either in a vertical application or a horizontal application. We can put different paint finishes on it. We even ship out screws that match the color of the paint. I'm going to skip this slide real quick. This is just showing you how creative you guys can get, which we know you all are, on using a system that you may not have thought about using our products for. This is at let's call it a college with all the basketball and athletes' images put on the outside. Here are some of the different products that we can do that span different spans. Um, you can certainly go to our website and request any of this information with our brochures. We have different spanning capabilities. I'm not going to go into each and every one of them. This is a building that we did in downtown LA. So if any of you are in LA, you may have seen this building. This is the Metro Bus Maintenance Facility. Everything you see that's orange is actually our deck. And the architects, when they first met with me, I hear all the time, well, we're going to use you on a specific job in ABC City, California, right? But when the architects met with me, they actually knew, because I practiced architecture for 15 years, of which a good portion of that was in Colorado. And a Colorado firm designed this out of their LA office. And they knew I was an ex-employee, and they basically said, your deck is the most important part of this building. I never get to hear that. And the fact they shared that with me was pretty awesome. Um, and the reason this is an open air structure was so that they could hide, from what I was told, hide or put, not hide, but expose artwork that would rotate in the corner of where this intersection is. Here's a aquatic center we did with our sunscreen system out at Rancho Cucamonga, above the seating area. Solano College in Fairfield, California, beautiful building. This is here in Duarte, Southern California, the City of Hope, their parking structure. So I hope that you're seeing applications, obviously, to apply that work you all are working on, but to also create a, hey, I didn't know they do this. Here's a project out in, it's actually in Bakersfield, not Fresno, it's Bakersfield College. Here's an application of a job where Brian Yench sold this job in Louisville, Texas, where our deck was used as the structural deck, but also as sunscreens out in front. Here's an example of a large senior center that we did in the Bay Area, in the East Bay. And this is right near one of the BART stations that's in Oakland. And we didn't use our deck on the floors like we could have, but they used our deck as canopies above each balcony. And the cool part about it is we didn't use steel. They wanted anodized aluminum. So that's what we used in this application. UC Davis Castilian Hall. This deck was prime painted in our factory and then painted in the field that color. Now we also make a series of wide deck profiles that'll span anywhere from 24 feet all the way up to 58 feet. I'm not going to go into each and every one of them today, but know that we have the ability to do very long spans. Also, our commitment to sustainability, like I said earlier, is important about the recycled steel we can do. We can also use recycled acoustical elements. And by having us prime paint the deck, or finish paint for that matter, we can help eliminate HAPs and VOCs. It's also important to know in certain areas where learning is done, especially learning in classrooms, kids are only hearing one out of every four words. And whenever our deck can be used in a classroom environment where they will be able to hear every word because of good acoustics, it makes the learning environment better. This is our super wide deck with a cable suspended access panel. We also have to put air dams and foam closures like I explained earlier. Here's how we do the Natacoat system with our super wide deck. We start with G90 galvanized steel. We put a prime paint on it. We then put an intermediate Natacoat epoxy paint. We ship it to the job site, then in the field is installed an acrylic modified epoxy. Mesa State College in Grand Junction, Colorado. This is in Nevada. This is Harry Reid Field. 42-foot spans between these trusses, and they also buried all the sprinkler lines and the building enunciation systems. Frost Amphitheater at Stanford. San Jose Airport. I told you what my hot button was. Okay, so when this building was built, we gave them a change order of 150 bucks for every cutout that they could have done, but they chose not to do it. Excuse me. They chose not to do it because at the time they didn't have the money needed to pay us for the change order. But after the fact, they had all this money left over, and had they known that, they would have buried these sprinkler lines in a heartbeat. But they did a really good job making sure they were all laser straight. International Terminal at SFO. I see in the chat there's a lot of questions, it looks like, and hopefully by the end we'll have time to answer as many of those as possible. This is a Cade Winery that we did up in Napa Valley, where our deck was used just as a canopy. Amtrak Station in Bakersfield. This building has so much great daylighting going into it. It was a great use of our deck and the way the light comes into the space. One of the reasons, this is actually a beautiful building in Pennsylvania that's actually a church. One of the reasons I love working for the company and presenting to firms and individuals like all of you today is the sooner we can help you make a product decision that hopefully fits with your spans, your cost, your acoustics, all of that, the sooner that spaces like this get to happen. Now, I know you didn't look at the deck when you saw this picture, but God bless you if you did. Most of the time, people look at the beams and the supports, but this was at Yale University in New Haven, Connecticut. This used to be a outdoor area that they filled in and made part of the music library. Half Moon Bay Library in Half Moon Bay, California. If any of you today are from Nolan Tam Architects, thank you very much for designing this building. It's a beautiful application, and they utilize the depth of our deck to hide the utilities. Myriad of different buildings that we've done. I want to get to the part that is our Invista profile. That's this profile right here that I'm holding up a sample. Hopefully you can see it well. We make a product that it's called Invista. It has an evaluation report. We can do concave, convex panels. So you can really draw the building user's eyes upward to see something different than what they're normally used to seeing. We also have, excuse me, 6 different wood grain finishes we can do. That's a paint system that's applied. Again, for you in Texas, maybe you've been to this space. This is at West Texas A&M, where our deck is spanning from inside to outside. And we also have our deck being supported by wood glulam beams and trusses. Here's a fire station in Spring, Texas. with our Timberlock system. One of the most important parts of the materials are this right here. Here's how to do it correctly. We can do a hinged access panel we put in oval-shaped companion holes, they're called. That way you can actually run the utilities inside the depth of the deck, and we put Unistrut at the end of every access door that allows for the utilities to be hung from the underside, and then the companion holes that we put in allow for the utilities to run perpendicular, one cell to the right, one cell to the left for the hanging of the light fixture. That's how to do it correctly. Here's an example of where it was done. Um, and again, you from Texas have, I don't know if you've all been through this space, but this was at Dallas Love Field. And you can see that Mr. or Mrs. Electrician is up on their genie lift. And they've already done this row right here with all the utilities. This one hasn't, and this one haven't been done yet. There's the piece of Unistrut. That way they can install to a piece of channel just like they already know how to do. This is what it looked like after the fact. This is a project we did in Columbus, New Mexico. No wood grain finish. March Air Force Base, the Joint Deployment Center out here in Riverside, California. This deck had a slight curve to it in the soft direction, and the deck was spanning, I think those trusses are 28 feet. Here's a job that we did in Fort Worth, Dickey's Arena, with our specular A profile. We've also started, not also, but we make a product that's used in the multi-story residential market. We call it MSR. I don't know how many of you may or may not be involved in this type of work, but we have a composite floor deck system that's used in those spaces simply because we can help minimize the amount of closures that are used on a job. It's a huge deal. Here's an example of a job we did in Tallahassee, Florida. So you can either put furring channels and then put drywall underneath it. It's got I think it's an STC rating of 60, which is really high. Obviously, the concrete thickness will be dependent on what the STC rating is, as would what you're installing to the underside. Sometimes they just do a texture finish of the steel and then they paint it. This is a job that was in San Jose. We've worked with a lot of different design firms across the country. Anytime that work ends up being published on the covers of magazines, it's pretty important to us, whether it's from a firm that was a small boutique firm to a national global corporation. It's really important to us. We're a small company. The building on the lower right is the National Air and Space Museum in Chantilly, Virginia. And the cool part about that is it was actually featured as part of the Transformers 2 movie. We've been in about 12 to 13 movies, and I'm ashamed to say we were also used in a house on a reality show, reality TV show. I sold a job about 8 or 9 years ago. Family was building a new home down in Newport Coast. I thought it was Kobe Bryant's house. It was not. It was for a couple that were on the Real Housewives of Orange County. So I'm ashamed to say, or maybe not, that our deck was used in Dave and Shauna Bedor's house. They're no longer married. They divorced, sold the house for $13.75 million, but our deck was used in the house. We also have a charitable foundation. So if you're working on a job and you want us to make a contribution based on the building that you've designed, we do that all the time. We did it with Miyamoto Engineers on Night of a Thousand Drawings, where we were a major sponsor of those events. Really fun. If you had a chance to participate in them here in California, they were really fun. We've done work with food banks across the country. And if you register on our website after today, we do a monthly drawing for a American Express gift card for $100. And I'll bet you in the last 9 months, maybe a year, I haven't had anybody from California have their name drawn. So get in there and get your name entered. Um, and then also online, again, if you want additional HSW credits, there's an article on our website that I wrote that features a lot of the information about what we talked about today. Um, that all you have to do is read the article, take a test. It's 10 questions. It's open book. If I pass it the first time, anybody can pass it the first time. I tried to leave as much time as possible. Hopefully, there's questions. That concludes my portion of the presentation. I greatly appreciate you all attending. And if you have any questions down the road, feel free to email me, text me, call me, etc. I'm easily found.
All right. So we do have two questions so far. Anyone in the audience who would like to continue asking questions, please go ahead and post them in the Q&A. The first one, John, is from Chuck. Can your deck be used as a structural diaphragm to resist horizontal forces?
Yes, absolutely. We have a diaphragm manual that is available in the technical section of our website. And we have evaluation reports by IAPMO on a majority of all of our deck profiles.
All right. The next one is from Sarah. Are these all for unfilled metal deck for use in roof only?
Our decks can be used as roof decks and also composite floor decks. So both applications.
All right. Well, that seems to be all of the questions. I can go through a few of my prompts for the end. I know that we're a little bit short on time, or a little bit shy of the hour. But I do want to thank everyone for joining us today, and special thanks to John and Epic Metals for this informative presentation. A recording of this presentation will be posted to the AIA California website in the coming weeks, so you'll have access to that soon. And if you've made it this far, AIA California staff will report your one AIA LU HSW for you in the next 10 days. And we'll also send a follow-up email with information on our upcoming webinars and how to register for those. And before I say goodbye, I do see something from Natalie in the chat. What is the product used in the current photo on the screen?
The current photo on the screen, I believe, is our Taurus 4A.
All right. And lots of thanks in the chat, which I will duplicate. Thank you, John, again, and everyone. Epicmetals.com is the website. You can see it on the screen there if you're interested in any of the information, any of the products, getting a hold of John. You can do it all there. And other than that, I don't see any more questions. So we'll give everyone 10 minutes back in their day.
All right. Thank you all. I
Thanks,
appreciate it.
everyone. Have a good one. Thanks, John.
Bye.